So Eve, I wanted to ask you first, how come you decided to become a therapist in the first place?
Yeah, it's a combination of factors. My I had my youngest child was just about to go to kindergarten, and uh, I had not, after I left college and worked a few years, I got married, and then I didn't work until the youngest child was almost 5. So my husband was a medical student and went through internship and residency. And so during that time, I just took care of, I was a housewife, and I worked part-time as a secretary to help with our income. But now, the youngest child was 5, I was able to think of my career, and my husband was very supportive. And I didn't really know what to do. I had been an English major. There was a neighbor who was involved in a mental health research project at the University of Rochester, where we lived at the time. And she always said to me, "Why don't you come and do this?" And I thought, I don't know. I don't know if I want to work with children. I've been raising children for many years now. Maybe I want to get away from children. I thought of becoming a travel agent. But a couple of things happened. First of all, I had some psychotherapy myself in the process of trying to find myself at this point. And I was very, very impressed with the results. I mean, I felt so helped. And I thought, oh, it must be wonderful to do this work. If I could only help one person feel as good as I feel, that would be wonderful. But I don't think that's a career for me. I don't think I could take the emotions of it and all. So um, my husband and I were friends with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and her husband for quite a number of years. And on one of our trips to Chicago, Elizabeth, who was just coming up in the world and was, getting very famous, was having seminars at the University of Chicago. And my husband was at a medical meeting, and she said to me, "Oh, Eve, you've got to come to my seminar." And I thought, oh, I don't want to see a dying person being interviewed. I had never experienced any death in my family, even though I was an immigrant. My grandparents died. I never witnessed firsthand death.
Mhm.
I was afraid of it. And I was also embarrassed to tell her that I can't come because I'm afraid of the emotions of having to witness something like that. So I sort of gritted my teeth and I went. And, at first I was very nervous, and then I began to get engaged. And I was fascinated. And after the interview, she came out from behind the one-way mirror and there must have been 150 people in the audience. And she asked questions. And one of the questions she asked was, because she had been talking to the patient who died a week later and who was exactly my age and had small children. And she was holding her hand. And one of the questions she asked was, how many of you would not have been able to touch the patient?
Mm.
And hands went up.
Mm.
And I looked around and I thought, oh my goodness, of course one would touch the patient. One would want to comfort her and touch her. All these people here, there's psychiatrists and psychologists and social workers and priests, and hands are going up. So this was like oh my goodness. I would have felt comfortable doing this. So that made me begin to think, well, maybe I could become a therapist. I could try it in this research project with the children. And so I tried it. And oh my goodness, we were being trained to do play therapy in the school system by the University of Rochester by a fantastic staff of experts, psychologists, analysts, child analysts, and all. It was a wonderful program. I don't think I ever learned so much clinical skill as I did in that program. I started there, and within probably a couple of months, I thought, I don't want to be a paraprofessional. I want to do this professionally. And so I stayed in this program for 4 years, but I did a master's degree meanwhile.
Oh. So this was a program that was, it was not for professionals, but for people who wanted to help in the hospital.
They wanted to help children. The goal of the project was, they had done a earlier study to determine at what stage do children develop serious emotional problems. And of course they do around 7th grade, around 12, 13. So they thought, well, and in those days there was a lot of money for research, community psychology, and so forth. And so they thought, well, if we trained people to work with children who younger than that, who we could identify as potentially having problems by 7th grade, maybe we could train these people to work with the children in play therapy, because we don't have enough social workers and psychologists in the schools to do that on a one-to-one basis with children 3 times a week. So they had done the research. They had found that indeed they could identify these. They could red flag these children, and sure enough, 6 years later, they were usually they were too aggressive, and then they found also children who were too withdrawn, and then they trained these women. And the project had been going on for a while, and my neighbor was in it and told me about it, and I would think, but I can't do that. I didn't think I was suited for it, but I loved it the minute I started, and it was just like my world opened up. Really liked it.